Hi everyone, this is Laura Stone from Psych 512, and I will be presenting on Week 7's material, focusing on the concept of aggression. I'll start by reviewing a summary of the week's material, and then we'll take a deeper dive into a few of the theories related to aggression. Cawson, Fine, and Marcus define aggression as behavior intended to harm another individual. There are many factors affecting aggression in people. The first we will discuss is culture, beginning with the differences between collectivism and individualism. Collectivist cultures generally tend to emphasize the values of cooperation, harmony, and interdependence. In contrast, individualist countries, such as the United States, tend to emphasize values like independence, autonomy, and reliance on self. In individualist cultures, viewing oneself as more disconnected from others can result in increased aggression. Also related to culture, the U.S. has a large amount of gun violence compared to the rest of the world, and Americans also tend to have much more positive attitudes around firearms. Some researchers think that the high murder rate in the Americas could be attributed to the prevalence of guns. The next factor we will discuss is gender. Men tend to be more violent than women across all cultures, and the vast majority of murder victims are male. However, women are just as likely to feel angry as men. They just act it out differently. Cawson, Fine, and Marcus make a differentiation between relational and overt aggression. Overt aggression is more direct and more likely to be associated with boys. Relational aggression is indirect, and girls tend to exhibit this form of aggression. Relational aggression could include tactics such as gossiping or targeting someone's social status. Another gender-related factor is the prevalence of gender norms. Though men may experience aggression or violence, they're less likely to report it due to expectations for them to be tough. Individual differences can also affect aggression. Certain personalities may be associated with heightened aggression. The 5 factors researchers use to assess variability of personality are agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness, extroversion, and neuroticism. Being low in agreeableness is a strong predictor for aggression, and low openness paired with high neuroticism is also associated with aggression. Relatedly, the dark triad encompasses 3 traits that are associated with violence and aggression: narcissism, Machiavellianism, which is a high tendency to manipulate others, and psychopathy. Lack of self-control seems to be integral in predicting aggression. Poor self-control can lead to crime, bullying, and aggression. Lastly, individual biology can also influence aggression. Genetics may explain about 1/3 to 1/2 of variability in aggression in individuals, but the strength of that relationship can vary. Hormones certainly play a role in prompting aggression. Several studies have linked testosterone to aggression in boys, but it's the combination of high testosterone and low cortisol that predicts aggression. Serotonin also plays a role, as this hormone can help restrain aggressive impulses. Lastly, executive function includes the cognitive functions that enable humans to plan or stop their actions. Poor executive function has been linked to aggression, as you've probably heard in recent years with reports of brain damage in football and other contact athletes. Players with a history of concussions have demonstrated damage to areas of the brain associated with executive functions, resulting in heightened aggression and impulsivity. Though there are biological and individual factors that impact aggression, there is strong evidence that aggression is a learned behavior. Social learning theory suggests that we learn from observing others and then modeling their behavior, and also from our own personal experience with punishments and rewards. So when we observe violence or aggression in certain settings and see that it's accepted or even encouraged, we may model that behavior. Larea, Samara, and Wolk found in 2013 that children exposed to negative parenting practices, like neglect or abuse, were more likely to be victims or bully victims. Related to this, the cycle of violence is the transmission of violent behavior across generations. Children who witness violence in their own homes are more likely to inflict violence or be victims of it themselves. Lastly, anthropologists have deemed certain cultures as cultures of honor. These cultures emphasize honor and social status and recognize aggression as the way to protect honor and status. These cultures emphasize honor and social status and recognize aggression as the way to protect honor and status. Studies demonstrate that cultures of honor promote violent behavior, and they are also shown to be associated with school violence. Situational factors can either promote or inhibit aggression, and we will discuss 5. First, the frustration-aggression hypothesis suggests that frustration always causes the motive to aggress, and all aggression is a result of frustration. Though frustration is certainly an influence in aggression, this hypothesis was found to be too absolute to be fully accepted. However, it can still be helpful in understanding behavior. Greatmeyer and Sagioglu found in their 2016 study that perceived disadvantage compared to peers resulted in increased aggression in individuals, indicating that frustration does have a role to play in influencing aggression. Second, negative affect can influence aggression. Different stimuli can cause aggressive behavior, including noise, heat, and provocation. Third, physical arousal can intensify emotions and cause aggression. Fourth, conscious or unconscious thoughts can impact aggression. For example, studies about the weapons effect demonstrated that even the presence of guns or other weapons can heighten aggression. On the more conscious side of cognition, if people have a hostile attribution bias, they tend to perceive hostile intent in others, even when it's not there, which can result in aggressive behavior. Lastly, as we've discussed previously, self-control is an important factor in aggression. Ruminating on angry thoughts that can provoke aggression, as can behaviors that inhibit self-control, such as the excessive use of alcohol. Ruminating on angry thoughts can provoke aggression, as can behaviors that inhibit self-control, such as excessive use of alcohol. You've probably noticed that a lot of the media we consume is violent, from the news to the videos on social media to your favorite show on Netflix. Research has demonstrated that these portrayals of violence can have an effect on individuals. One study found that exposure to violent media in early life predicts aggressiveness and criminality in adults. Other studies have confirmed a positive relationship between exposure to violent content and aggression. Exposure to violence can also lead to desensitization, which reduces one's reaction to portrayals of violence. The relationship between pornography and aggression is complex. Research shows that negative effects are more evident in men with risk factors, including a tendency toward violent pornography and attitudes indicating their acceptance of violence toward women. Lastly, violent media, including pornography, can lead to objectification and dehumanization of certain groups of people, particularly women. There are many proven interventions and solutions to help reduce aggression and violence. Education and improved moral reasoning can result in the generation of empathy, which can reduce aggression. Training focused on mindfulness, cognitive reappraisal, and control can improve self-control in individuals. Because exposure to weapons has been shown to increase aggression, reducing that exposure can help prevent violence. Multisystemic therapy helps children prone to antisocial behaviors by approaching the issue from many different angles, and it's been shown to be extremely effective. Implementing effective bullying prevention programs has also shown promise in reducing bullying in schools. They encourage empathy, and they often get prominent peers to lead the way. There are also very simple, everyday things we can do to affect change in the area of aggression, including things as simple as keeping temperatures cool. Now we'll take a deeper dive into the forces behind aggression. Relative deprivation theory suggests that deprivation is experienced when individuals measure their circumstances by a shared social standard, rather than objectively. This comparison can cause dissatisfaction with one's own circumstances, even frustration. The frustration-aggression hypothesis suggests a correlation between aggression and the frustration of being unable to attain a goal or desired object. These theories indicate that frustration can result from perceived disadvantage or interruption, which in turn can cause anger. Grademeyer and Zagaloglu in 2016 examined the relationship between subjective low socioeconomic status, SES, and aggression. The researchers found that participants of low subjective SES demonstrated more aggression than those with higher subjective SES. They also found that perception of disadvantage specifically was related to low subjective SES. These findings support the theory of relative deprivation, demonstrating that perceived deprivation or disadvantage can result in aggression. The symbolic interactionist perspective rests on the premise that meaning is socially constructed, acquired through others, or created through interactions, rather than assigned objectively by the intake of sensory information. Further, individuals act on the basis of the meaning they assign things. In this view, deviant behavior, such as aggression, is labeled as deviant not because the actions are objectively deviant, but because society assigns meaning to certain behaviors and interprets those as deviant. Zubinski in 2009 examined deviant behavior in the context of sports through the lens of symbolic interactionism. He points out that players exhibiting deviant behavior, like excess brutality, are often instructed to play that way by coaches, and then behavior is reinforced by fans. Additionally, fanatic football supporters are often known to exhibit deviant and destructive behavior at games, and law enforcement has been forced to accommodate their aggressive behavior to minimize harm, thereby enabling it to continue. Therefore, though considered deviant in some contexts, behaviors such as aggression may be permitted or even encouraged in others, allowing their social learning theory suggests that individuals learn behavior through the observation of others, as well as through personal experience with rewards and punishments. This theory suggests that when exposed to negative behaviors of others, like aggression, individuals may model those. Lorea, Samara, and Wolk in 2013 examined the relationship between parenting behavior and victimization. Results indicated that children exposed to negative parenting practices were more likely to be victims or bully victims. This supports social learning theory, indicating that the negative behaviors modeled by parents or others can result in those behaviors being learned and imitated in children. Thus, aggression can result from learning aggressive behaviors from others and modeling those in one's own life. Considering how much media we now consume on a daily basis, knowing its impact on our behaviors and cognition is important. One study by Huseman and colleagues in 2003 found that exposure to violent media in childhood can actually predict aggressiveness and criminality in adults. Another study by Grademeyer and Muge in 2014 found that playing violent video games was associated with more aggressive behavior, cognition, and negative affect, and decreased prosocial behavior. One additional effect of violent media is desensitization. This can be defined as a diminished reactivity to emotional-related stimuli, in this case, violent material. fMRI studies demonstrate that neural responses become suppressed when individuals are exposed to material frequently. Therefore, exposure to violent material actually affects our neural processes, which can result in desensitization and aggression. Which can result in desensitization and increased aggression. Though cultures differ around the globe, aggression is a common phenomenon. Bullying is a form of aggression that's encountered universally. Bullying involves intentional harm, repetition, and power imbalance. While it's encountered in many cultures, the form it takes may differ from country to country. In the U.S. and Western countries, bullying is more likely to take place on the playground and involve students who do not know each other well. In Eastern cultures, bullying is more likely to involve an entire class singling out one student. In the Southern U.S., the culture of honor is prevalent, which has been shown to encourage violent responses to threats against one's honor. Many programs to combat bullying and violence are being implemented in different countries across the globe, and are finding success in all different cultures. Programs that get popular peers involved in leading the charge are particularly successful, as are programs that can effectively cultivate empathy among individuals. Questions. Identify an example of overt or relational aggression in Scripture. What are some tools discussed in the Bible that can be useful in reducing this form of aggression? Discuss social learning theory as it relates to aggression. How does this theory explain the transmission and perpetuation of aggressive behavior and attitudes?